Hey everybody, welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. Today we're going to be doing the rod bearings on this S54. Now, I've done rod bearings before, but this is obviously my first time doing it on an S54, and this is the first time doing rod bearings where I don't have a full engine apart. So oftentimes when these are done, it's done while the engine is still in the car. You get underneath it and you would drop the oil pan and you have to disconnect some other stuff. So obviously I've done that, so the power steering pump is gone. A lot of these lines here have been disconnected. Just some other things that are attached to the oil pan. The dipstick goes here, so obviously that's been removed. And then I'll be able to remove the oil pan. And then while I'm here, I'm also gonna be removing this gasket here and then doing an oil pan gasket as well. Might as well, because you're here. In fact, a lot of people that do oil pan gaskets will check to make sure their bearings have been done. There is a bit of a process doing this when it comes to torquing everything back down. I don't know the exact numbers. So there's actually three numbers. You've got your initial torque, and then you've got your set torque, and then you've got like a degree that you've got to spin it to. So we're gonna get all that. I'm gonna look that up, and if you want to know, then I guess it's different because there's a couple different variants of bolts used. So I'm hoping that when I pull this apart that the bolts I ordered are the correct ones. If they're not, then I'm in a bit of a pickle, but we'll find out pretty soon here. So we're gonna be removing the oil pan, taking out all the bolts all the way around this. Since you guys have seen the engine last, I did new belts, which I then had to remove again, spark plugs, valve cover gasket. I did the Vanos filter and a couple gaskets in the Vanos system. Everything was good there. So it's been pretty easy to work on. So we're gonna get this off, and then while this is off, we're gonna clean everything back up and then put the oil pan gasket back on, make sure to use some RTV so that we're not having any leaks when we're done with it. So let's get this started. Cross your fingers that I bought the correct rod bolts, because if I didn't, this could get messy. All right, so it's been a little bit since I pulled the oil pan off. Two things. One, I spilled oil all over the floor. So even upside down like this, the oil pan was still holding onto like a quart of oil. So I had to clean all that up. Then I get looking at the bolts for the rods here, and they're different. The other thing I looked up before any of this was I made sure that my VIN matches the recalls that these bearings needed, and it does. So there's two different types of bolts. One of them is this 12 point, it's a 12 millimeter, I think anyways, it's a 12 point socket. I haven't taken one off yet, so I think it looks like a 12 millimeter, but there's that, and then there is an E socket. The E socket one gets torqued to 5 Newton meters, and then 30 Newton meters, and then it goes to 105 degrees. So they are torqued to yield. My engine is not gonna be that. The other bolts, these ones here, go to 5 Newton meters and then 30 Newton meters, and then it only goes to 70 degrees, which is quite a bit less than 105. So they're basically not completely stretched. They're not torqued to yield. I found all this out because I found the actual recall paperwork from BMW. It shows basically all the information you would need for something like this. I will put that in the description below so anybody else who's doing this project doesn't have to run into those problems. What that does mean is I get to return all my bolts because I'm able to reuse these. In fact, in the paperwork, it specifically says to reuse this. In fact, let me read it real quick. The M11 by 1.25, which is these ones, will be reused with the new bearings. It is essential to mark them and reinstall them in the exact same order. For example, from the exhaust, put the exhaust side back into the exhaust side and the intake back on the intake side. So I have to put them back in the exact same hole they came out of. On vehicles with the new design, the M10 by 1.25 connecting rod bolts have to be replaced with the new connecting rod bearings. And then it says the M10 by 1.25 have to be ordered separately. So what that means is I can reuse these bolts. The other thing is we're not sure if this has been done yet. One of the things that did make me a little bit suspicious to if this has been done or not. When I took the car to BMW to get the airbag replaced, and they did a couple other things, at the dealership, they didn't mention this. The other thing is that when we looked up the VIN online, it didn't show up that it had been done either. So that's why I double checked to make sure the VIN actually was in the range of the bearing replacements. So I'm thinking that this might have been done by a shop, and then when BMW hit up this owner, he then told them, hey, I did it somewhere else. Because even though I don't think BMW would take this under its warranty if it hadn't been done already, they would have at least mentioned it to me, trying to get a couple grand out of me, trying, saying, hey, you need to do these, we can do them for you. They didn't even mention it. So we're thinking that they either haven't been done and BMW just overlooked it, or they have been done by a previous owner, and the previous owner then told BMW, hey, take my car off the list. I had so-and-so do my car. But then I would assume that it would show up on BMW's information on the car saying that it's been done. So anyways, we're gonna pop one of these off. We're gonna check to make sure that it's got new bearings. If it doesn't have new bearings, then we are going to replace them with the ones that we've got. Look up the link that I have in the description and then go from there. If you have to give new bolts, they're not that expensive. I think they're like $6 a piece. So you're looking at like 80, 90 bucks to get some new bolts and then your bearings. If you're doing this project yourself, it saves you a ton of money. I bet you a shop would charge over $1,000 for some of this stuff. I think BMW's charge with parts and labor was like $2,500. So let's get these off. Before I do that, I do have to take off the oil pump here. Now there was one thing I noticed here on the oil pickup screen, a little tiny piece of plastic. Oh wow, okay, so this plastic has been like melted and then went around the screen. So the stuff that I just picked off right there was I was actually picking out from the grate in the screen. So I'm gonna clean that up. It's kind of like a green plastic, so I'm not sure what that would be, but I did notice that on the pickup screen. So obviously when you've got yours apart, make sure to check that, clean that out. This is a reverse thread. I know I had a lot of people on my M54 rebuild, I put a wired oil pump nut so that it wouldn't spin off. This is not a big enough piece and the wire doesn't weigh that much, but everybody was getting all mad that mine didn't look as professional, and they were like, oh, you put it on backwards. This is a reverse thread. So it's a righty loosey, lefty tighty. So we're gonna get that taken off so we can, because the chain, I can't take the chain off. I can't actually take the chain off unless you go up top. So we're gonna disconnect all this stuff, get the oil pump out of the way, clean it up, and then start pulling the rod bearings out. I am interested to see what they look like. So I've got everything put back together, torqued down, all the new bearings are in there. I am very glad that I went and did this. If you have any doubt at all, check them. The best way to do that, I think, is if you ever do an oil pan or anything like that, well, first off, check to make sure that your vehicle, go through all the information in your VIN and check to see if BMW knows anything about it, and then go through the history on the car, see if any of the previous owners have done it. If you're curious at all, and especially if you need to do your oil pan gasket or anything like that, go to do your oil pan gasket, and then I would probably, if it were me and I was just checking to see, I would almost order a set of new bearings and those M10 bolts, the other bolts, because it's kind of difficult to know which bolts your engine has. And I would probably order that. I know it's kind of a large price tag to buy and then hold on to see if you need them. And then if you do need them, check it. If you have the M10 bolts, pull one of your caps off, check your bearing. If everything looks good, then use 2 of the bolts that you bought, put it back together, do your oil pan gasket, seal everything up, put it away. If you've got these ones, you can reuse these bolts. You can just send the other type of bolts back. Then you don't have to worry about it. So that's probably what I would end up doing. I would order everything and prepare for a complete rod bearing replacement. And then if you don't need it, it's fine. Package it all back up, send it back. But you definitely don't want to let these engines go very long. As you can see, those bearings we had were pretty bad. And I am very happy that we decided to dig into this and make sure that that was done. One thing, I did break this. This is the chain guide for the oil pump. This sits like this up against the chain on that side of the engine. And when I was loosening oil pump nut, the chain came up in tension tight and it pushed this back and it broke. So I'm gonna have to replace this, and that's a little bit bigger project than I was hoping to do. These chain guides can last a long time. I was being kind of rough with it and I broke it. So the whole front of the engine now has to come off. That's your timing cover in the front. So I believe all the accessories on the front of the engine and the harmonic balancer in the front all have to come off. And then I'm just gonna replace all the timing chain guides. It's more work than I wanted to do more than anything. So we're just gonna go through the front of the engine, make sure that everything's okay. That wasn't on the list of stuff to do, but now it is. So thanks everybody so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I will do my best to answer anything that I know of. I'm still learning about this, so hopefully we can learn together. Again, the link to the recall papers will be in the description below. If you're interested in supporting the channel beyond just giving the video a like, make sure to check out our Patreon. Link is in the description below. We offer early ad-free access of all of our content. Also check out our Instagram. Follow us on there to see sneak peeks of future projects and future videos. Also hit up our Instagram if you are interested in a shirt or a sticker. Thanks again so much everybody for watching, and we will see everybody in the next video.